Talk about surface roughness or surface finish and how to use this Taylor Hobson portable profilometer, and that was given to me by Nick along with all the dial indicators, and I think you'll enjoy watching that. I am not an expert by any means in this field, but first let me talk about surface texture, surface finish, and surface roughness. You know, my brother used to always tell me, he'd say, have you noticed that the closer that you look at something that's man-made, the more irregular and rough that it appears as you magnify it. However, the more you magnify something that is in nature, made by God, the more perfect it is. For instance, if you were to magnify the wing of a butterfly, you're going to find more and more perfection the greater that you enlarge it. But in my career in teaching, when the kids were learning, they'd end up with some pretty rough finishes. And I really only had two ways of describing it. One is that it's rough as a cob, or the other, it's as smooth as a hound's tooth. But we can measure the roughness and quantify it with different instruments, or estimate it visually, or with our fingernails, or just by the feel of it. So let me show you some of those ways first, because that's what you're going to do in your own home shop. You're not going to have one of these. As a matter of fact, I never had one of these until 3 weeks ago. General Electric came out with these pocket surface roughness testers or scales some time ago. And these would be used by inspectors, probably not the machinists, but by an inspector as he came around. And there are various samples here of different ways of machining, and you could feel it or look at it and compare it with the product that is being finished or machined. And you can see there that we got grinding, and we got milling, and we got turning, and so on. And then the numbers there indicate in RA, which I'm going to talk more later, or micro inches of finish. And those are General Electric. Those are pretty snazzy. And I think these are fairly expensive. But really, here on eBay, those are the General Electric samples that would be used in the inspection lab or someplace like that. Probably not out on machinery, but they're in a wooden case, and you can buy a used set of those for about $150 on eBay. But that's not something you're going to have, whereas you might actually have a set of these or be able to buy a set of those reasonably. And also, here's another one, and I don't like these as well, but this would be a lot cheaper, surface finish comparator, but it's all plastic. And there too it shows you the different finishes done by an end mill or grinding, and then there again is the number, and we've got both sides here. So that's interesting too, just to compare to a surface that you may have machined by a lathe or a mill or a grinder. Here's a piece of aluminum that I just milled 30 seconds ago. That's still rough sawing out there. And we could measure that too, but why would you? Sawing is just a primary operation, not the finish operation. But anyway, we got a glare there with the light, but I can compare this finish, and I used a real fast feed here. I wasn't even trying for a good finish, and it isn't a very good finish, and I can feel it with my fingernails. And then I can compare it here with the GE roughness scale. And I get a kick out of the fact that they don't ever talk about smoothness, they talk about roughness. Whereas I think in my career I talked about how smooth something was. But the correct term, of course, is roughness. And I can compare that with the milling here, and I really can't find one on the GE scale that matches on either one of these. But using the other one here, the flex bar, right away under end mill here, I found one that pretty well matches. I know that's not going to show up there at all. But that's a 125 microinches. So I have just measured visually the surface roughness of this cut.